So the big question is this: how do you lose all the weight that you want and actually keep it off for the rest of your life, while trying to make sense of all the noise that comes from the weight loss industry? That is the question. And this podcast will give you the answers.
G'day guys, and welcome to the next episode of the Weight Loss Secrets podcast. My name is Baron Grant and I'm wrapped to be with you for another day, another idea, another tip, some more tricks that are going to help you to make changes in your life to lose all that weight that you've been trying to lose for years maybe. And we want you to keep it off for the rest of your life. That's the whole goal here. So I want to go through some ideas that might help you on that journey. Now today I want to talk about the 3 reasons that you might have what people would call a sweet tooth. Now, I hear this a lot, and just recently it's prompted me to have this discussion because on some of my calls just recently I've heard a number of people that I've spoken to say, Baron, I just have a sweet tooth, and I have a sweet tooth, and everyone has the same sort of message around that. And I think sometimes we can get caught up in saying those things and we actually start to believe the hype, right? It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But before I even talk about my 3 things, I want to say this. Having a sweet tooth is a choice. We choose to have a sweet tooth, or we don't have a sweet tooth. Like, it's something that we actually make a decision about. And I think that's a really important overarching thought process. We live in a world at the moment where not everybody, but lots of people are trying to find things to justify behavior. So it could be that they're looking for little syndromes that they might have, or situations that cause them to be able to absolve themselves of responsibility. Weight gain really is because of what we eat, always, and drink, of course, but it's sometimes people try to find other reasons to make themselves feel better about the situation that they find themselves in. And it's no different with saying things like, I have a sweet tooth. Instead of actually acknowledging the real reason that they're eating lots of sweet food, it's easier to say that's kind of a thing I've got and I just am naturally drawn to it, or whatever, because I think that can make us feel a little better about the situation that we might find ourselves in, rather than fully taking responsibility for our own actions. And that's what I'm all about, is if we want to be somewhere different, then we have to change our behavior. We have to change our actions, and that will get us to where we want to be. Instead of relying on any external influence or any syndrome or anything we might be told that we have, we're better just to take responsibility for where we're at and keep pressing forward. So here are the 3 things that I want to talk about that I think why people think they might have a sweet tooth. Number 1 is the habits that we create. Every day we create habits, or we live the habits that we've created in the previous years. Whether we get up early or we get up late is a lot of the time, forced at the start, and then the habit continues, and that just becomes our natural mode of operation. And eating chocolate or eating lollies in the afternoon, or eating them before we go to bed, or eating them in the middle of the day, or the first thing we do when we get up in the morning, it's just habits. We create these habits over a long period of time, and then we start to believe that that's just the way that we are. It's not true. We've just created habits. I talk to lots of people, and they say, Baron, I have to start my day with a coffee, or I need a coffee, really is the words that they use. Total and utter bullcrap. Not true, but we've created a habit, so now our body wakes up in the morning and goes, ooh, I need a coffee, because we've told our body that we need a coffee for so many years of doing it at the same time every day. And the same thing is with chocolate. We tell ourselves that we need a chocolate, or we tell ourselves that we need a reward, or we've earned it, or we tell ourselves some story. But we've created a habit over time that our body now almost craves it at that moment, because that's what we've taught our body. We've taught our body that we get up at this time, we do this, and then we have a chocolate at 10 a.m. or at 3 p.m. So think about your habits around your sweet eating. When is it? A lot of the time it's sort of afternoon. And sometimes those habits are formed because we're not eating the proper things. We're not getting good nutrition into our bodies. So then we're low on energy. And so we've created a habit by not eating good nutrition, good nutritious foods, if I can even speak properly. We've created a habit of not eating the foods that our body actually needs. Then we're lacking later in the afternoon. And so the habit is we go and grab the sugar because it gives us a kick. We're up, we're awake, we're alive. It doesn't hang around for very long. but that's what we've created the habit around. So think about when you're eating it and what has prompted that and what has caused you to have that food at that particular time, and what maybe have you been eating earlier in the day that maybe caused you to have that low that your body wants, easy, accessible energy in that sugar. So habits. Think about your habits. What habits have you created that cause you to have the food that's not so awesome or make you feel like you have a sweet tooth? The second thing is your language or your words. My wife says it all the time. She goes, our brains are an obedient computer. Whatever we program in is what we're going to get. And I absolutely agree with her. Sometimes we program rubbish in and we get rubbish out. And the way we speak and the way we choose to speak about things absolutely affects our behavior. So thinking about when we say, I have a sweet tooth, we actually absolve ourselves of responsibility. I just have a sweet tooth. This is happening to me, as opposed to choices that I'm making. When we say things like, I need a chocolate, I need chips, I need things that are unhealthy, it makes us feel better than saying I want, because we sound gluttonous if we say I want. But we don't need any of that stuff, ever actually. We can only ever want it, right? Unless maybe you're a type 1 diabetic and you need to have some sugar to get out of a hypo. Totally different discussion. But in most cases, we never need that stuff, but we may want that stuff. And that's the language that we probably need to change. And so when we say that we've got a sweet tooth, we're going to believe that we've got a sweet tooth. We're going to believe that we almost don't have control of that beast, but we do. And so how we choose to speak to ourselves, and I could talk about this for hours, but how we choose to speak to ourselves in our own heads to make the decisions that we make is super, super important, because no real actions happen without thoughts happening first. So we have to talk, we have to get the monologue inside our brains right. We don't need sugar. There's no real great value in eating loads of that crap sort of sweet stuff. So we've got to change the way we speak to ourselves so that we don't talk about it in those terms. The other thing that I will acknowledge makes it a bit more challenging is that sugar, chocolates, ice creams, all of those things that are quite high in sugar foods and not healthy, they provide our brain with a dopamine hit in the same way that cocaine does. And so of course it's addictive, right? It's super crazy addictive. You can break the addiction really quick, but it is super crazy addictive, because every time you get it, you're like, woo, I feel happy and I feel great for a second. That is normally quite a fleeting feeling, but when we're feeling sad or depressed or lonely or just grumpy or frustrated or tired from the day at work, then that dopamine hit can feel amazing. So we're like, oh, that's going to make me feel better. It's that comfort eating. It's that, as someone said to me once, it's eating your feelings. That sort of stuff can make you feel better in the instant, in the moment. It doesn't make us feel better long term, because then we've contributed too much to our calorie intake, too much to our sugar intake, we'll gain weight, we'll look in the mirror and not be happy. So not eating it is always better than eating it, but understanding that it's giving you this little spike, it's giving you this little happy moment, that makes it harder, right? So those things can make us believe that we've got a sweet tooth, but it all comes back to good nutrition at the start and good habits. If we fill our bodies with really good food during the day, we're not going to need the sugar hit later on, because we've got good nutrition providing our body with everything that we need. The problem is good fuel in, good energy and use of that energy out, bad fuel in, bad energy out. So we end up having less energy eating more of this stuff. But they're the sort of three things that I like to talk about today. That is, we've got to change our habits. If we don't want to think, because it's only we think that we've got a sweet tooth. If we don't want to think that we've got a sweet tooth anymore, right, we need to look at our habits. We need to change our habits and think about the food that we're eating throughout the day. What habits have we got into to get to a point where we need those constant little sugar hits? We need to think about the way we speak to ourselves. Are we telling ourselves that we've got this or that problem, or that we've got a sweet tooth, and we're creating that narrative in our brains that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy? And are we conscious of the hits that this sugar is giving us that makes us desire more and more and more and more? The more you have it, the more you want it, the more hits you give yourself, the more you'll want. So just a couple of tips to help us think about, we are in more control of the sugar that we put in our mouth than what we think we are. And we're in more control of our thoughts and the words we tell ourselves to avoid those situations in the first place than what we think we can. No one is governed by food, really. We might think we are. And we might think we need certain sugary things, and we might think we need certain caffeine things, and we might think we need all those things. We don't. And the more we stay away from them, the better our bodies will feel as long as we replace those things with really good nutrition. So don't believe the hype. There's no such thing really as a sweet tooth. We just want to have sugar if that's the case. And when we stop wanting to have sugar, which will happen when you start eating really good food, the whole process will become easier and the cravings will go away. But you've got to replace it with really good food. When you do that, you'll win every single day of the week. There's a couple of tips for today. Hope you guys have a ripper. Talk soon.